This is Module 4, Lesson 1. We're talking about line plots. So when we look at a line plot, the first thing we do is we have to look at from 0 to 1. So here's 0, here's 1. And we count the number of spaces. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And when we have those 8 spaces, it tells us that each line is going to be worth 1/8. So in this case, like this line right here is 1/8. So once I know that, the easiest thing to do is to go and label anywhere where there is an x. So in this case, I have the 1 here. So for these x's, I have the 1 here, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 1 and 6/8 because we figured out that there were 8 spaces already. So now I look over here, and this is worth 2 because they're at the whole number 2. And now I look here, and each x here is worth 2 and 1/8. And I look over here, and each of these is worth 2 and 4/8. And this one over here is 2 and 5/8. And this one over here is 2 and 7/8. So now I know what all the measurements are. It will help me to answer the questions. So the first question is, what's the measurement of the shortest plant? Shortest means the smallest number. It means it hasn't grown much off the ground if it's a small number. So I find the smallest x at the smallest location. 1 and 6/8 is the smallest. Here's the x's. So it's 1 and 6/8 is my measurement. Then I look at how many plants measure 2.5 inches. And when I look through these, I don't see anything that says 2.5. I do see, however, that 2 and 4/8 can be simplified to 2.5. So I look at how many plants are there. I have 2 x's. Since there's no key, then I just assume that each x is worth 1. So there are 2 plants that are listed at 2.5. The measurement of the tallest plant, I go to the way n, the biggest number, and the tallest plant is over here at 2 and 7/8. And then it asks, what's the difference? And difference tells me to subtract between the tallest plant, which is 2 and 7/8, and the smallest plant. And now we know we can do this without turning them into improper fractions, but we have been told that when we subtract, no matter what, we should get in the habit of turning them into improper fractions. So 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 7 is 23. And then 8 times 1 is 8 plus 6 is 14. And when I subtract these two, 23/8 minus 14/8, I get 9/8, which is equal to 1 and 1/8. Another example of something that could be asked, sometimes it says, what is the frequency, or how frequent? That means the spot that has the most x's above it. That's the frequency of it. So I have to look again to what the measurements are. So here's 0 to 1, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And since I have 4 spaces, I know everything's a fourth. So the spot with the most x's is right here. There's 4 x's. So I notice I have 4, so my answer is going to be 4 and something. So it's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Because we know we're working in fourths. And if I look at my title, we're talking about inches, so I would label that inches. The last thing we're going to talk about with the line plot is sometimes we have to make the line plot. So in this case, I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to start it with 0 down here. And because I see that my largest number on my list of numbers here is 3 3/4, I am going to make it end at 4 because 3 is not big enough, and 4 we don't need to go over. Now I'm going to split this up so that I can have all of my whole numbers here. And there's my whole numbers. Now I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at all of these denominators, and I'm going to figure out what denominator should I make this. The number of spaces between the whole number from 0 to 1. Well, 4 is my largest denominator up there, so I want 4 spaces, which means I'm going to draw 3 lines. I'm actually going to redo that though, because as we had said before, we don't want the lines going above, because it will get confusing. So we want 3 lines, which will make 4 spaces. So now each whole number is split up into fourths. Now I'm going to find where 1 and 1/2 is. This is this first one. I'm going to cross it off because I'm going to use it. So here's my 1 and 1/2, which is the same thing as 2/4, so I would put an X right here. Next is 2 and 3/4, so I find my 2 and I go to 3/4, which is right here. Then I have the whole number 3, so I just put an X above the 3. Then another 2 and 3/4, so an X goes above that. Then a 2 1/2, which is the same as 2 and 2/4, so here's the 2 and here's the 2/4. I have 2 and 3/4. Then I have 3 and 3/4. Then another 3. Then another 3 1/2, or a first time for a 3 1/2, which is 3 and 2/4. 2 1/2, which is 2 and 2/4. And then a 3 1/2. And now I have my line plot all set up and I can answer questions on my line plot. And that is lesson 1 for module 4, line plots.